Young cat got back, did a little bit. Now we hardy, puffy, tough, do-rag and Tim's. Kinda hard to get a job back out on the block. Charge that to the game. Young girl, she grew up in a rush. Had it bad, no doubt. She don't know who to trust. Every man she ever loved only wanna crush. Charge that to the game.
Welcome to Expose Under the Sun, brought to you by the Detroit Native Sun newspaper. I am your guest host, Patrice Lee, sitting in for Sharon Dumas. Today, we're celebrating Black History Month, and we'd like to highlight some outstanding Black men and women whose contributions have greatly enhanced our lives. We salute our own Ralph Bunche, who was the first person, Black or white, in the great state of Michigan to win the Nobel Peace Prize in 1950 for his work as mediator and peacemaker in the Middle East. We can thank Mr. Garrett A. Morgan, inventor and community leader, for the invention of the modern-day gas mask, and special thanks to the invention of the traffic light in 1923. Where would we be, Motor City, without the traffic light? Entrepreneur Madam C.J. Walker, through her line of hair products, became the first woman, Black woman, and first woman to achieve millionaire status, selling her very own products here in the United States. It's another proud moment in history when Bessie Coleman became the first woman in the world to own both an aviator's license and an international license to fly in 1920. Later, she was honored with an induction into the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame, another first. Today, we are honoring the work of two Detroiters who are making history at the Charles Wright Museum. And I'd like to welcome my two guests. Gentlemen, Mr. David L. Head, a history buff, is also an author, historian, and researcher of life and many scientific inventions of Granville T. Woods. He is founder and president of the David L. Head Foundation. Mr. Head is chairman of the Greater Detroit Historic Sites Committee at Detroit Historical Museum, and he is co-founder and coordinator of the Meet the Scientist project at the Charles Wright Museum. Dr. Terrence Dillard is an electrical engineer and professor at Lawrence Tech University. Dr. Dillard serves as subject matter expert for the FBI and is founding president of Information Systems Security Association of the North Oakland chapter at Baker College. Please meet my guests, Mr. David L. Head and Dr. Terrence Dillard, co-founders of the Meet the Scientist program at the Charles Wright Museum. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to ask Mr. Head, can you give us a brief synopsis on how you got involved in the Granville T. Woods project? What inspired you to do this massive research, and how did the years of research on these accomplishments of Granville T. Woods begin?
Well, it all goes back to when I was a child. A lot of things happen to us when we're young that impact our lives when we get older. And as a child, I didn't know anything about my history, and they wasn't really teaching me anything about my history in school. So I began to feel inferior, and I also felt invisible somewhat. But as I got older, my hero, Carter G. Woodson, he said a person receives two educations. One is given to you, and the other you give to yourself. I began to give myself a history lesson, but education is twofold. One is receiving the education, the other is utilization of it. And so when I decided to give back, I found my purpose and direction in life. And so I joined the TW Black History Committee, that's New York City Transit, and I would eventually become the chairperson of the Black History Committee. And I noticed there was no mention of Granville T. Woods. And I went on a fact-finding crusade in 1998 for 6 years. And after 6 years, I was finally able to get Mr. Granville T. Woods recognized for being the key inventor for the New York City's subway system for the opening of the Subway Centennial celebration.
That's awesome. How did your contribution to his acknowledgement affect the city of New York? What did you do to get him recognized? Would you name a couple of things that you did that were honorable?
Oh yeah, well, my dream became a reality when it opened up the Subway Centennial operation with the Granville T. Woods Subway Centennial exhibit, and people told me to continue to do my work. And so I was able to get him a street name in Coney Island. It's called Granville T. Woods Way. I was also able to get him inducted into the Hall of Fame in Coney Island for modernizing a roller coaster by electrifying it. And I was also able to do a documentary on his life, and I won a Telly Award. And you can go on YouTube and see that documentary free.
That's awesome. I understand he has several patents, and you've highlighted those patents. Could you just expound on that just a moment?
Oh, yeah. I encourage everybody to get my book. It's at the Charles H. Wright Museum. He had 49 patents, and a lot of patents he wasn't able to get because he didn't have a lot of times he didn't have the money to get his patent ideas out, so he would sell those ideas outright. But he did receive 49 patents, and he also became a patent attorney, going back and forth to court all the time.
So this book is available at the Charles Wright Museum. Is there any other way that you would like for our listening audience to get in touch with you to find out more information about what you do?
Oh, yes. You can go online and go to my website, davidlheadfoundation.com, davidlheadfoundation.com, and you'll see my email address, you'll see my contact cell number, and I'm usually at the Wright Museum as well.
Thank you, Mr. David Head. You're being very influential at this time in the city of Detroit, here in our great state of Michigan, in the history of science and research and technology. And we're going to get to some of the things that you collaborate with Dr. Dillard on in just a minute. I'm going to now introduce Dr. Dillard again and just say, Dr. Dillard, we'd like to know how you, as an FBI subject matter expert, would you explain to us what you do there?
Sure. First of all, I'm glad to be here. So what a subject matter expert is an individual who has particular skills, generally in cybersecurity. And within the federal government, really, we have a limited number of resources that are actually available to protect our critical infrastructure, such as the power grid, the agriculture, things of that nature, education, medicine, healthcare. And so what the federal government does is it reaches out to professionals in the civilian space, and lots of the critical networks are within our care. And so anytime there's a very serious issue, we're literally reached out to by the federal government to bring our knowledge and our skills to bear to help solve really serious issues.
So we're doing a lot of things through the FBI. It's not just investigation. There are other matters that we're concerned with that affect all of us on a daily basis that we don't even think about.
Absolutely, and it's not just the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Now the Department of Homeland Security also has a similar, what's known as a public-private partnership.
Yes.
And so literally government agencies across the board, they reach out to those of us who, in many cases, we've been doing this work much longer than the federal government. And so a lot of the standards get developed, and sometimes there's a cross-pollination of information between the federal government as well as universities and the private sector.
Wonderful. Then as you're very busy with that, but you also are a professor at the Lawrence Technological University, and you also teach at Baker College. Could you expound on that? Is it electrical engineering, or what is it your specialty there?
So yes, I'm a computer science professor at Lawrence Technological University. I teach a series of courses in information technology, information assurance, which is another name for information security. And so I teach primarily undergraduate, graduate level students. My actual profession is computer science, information security. Back in an earlier time of my life, I actually did electronics, but I don't do much electronics these days.
Okay.
Yes.
So what brings us here today, we're highlighting these two gentlemen during Black History Month, and we also have a major project or program that they have collectively co-founded or co-coordinated, at the Charles Wright Museum called Meet the Scientist. So would you expound on that, gentlemen, today, what this Meet the Scientist program is all about and the difference that you're making in the lives of youth here in the city of Detroit?
Okay, Meet the Scientist is part of the educational arm of the Inspiring Minds exhibit, African Americans in Science and Technology. That exhibit kicked off in November of 2012, and about 4 or 5 months later, we launched Meet the Scientists to bring out modern-day trailblazers in science, technology, engineering, and math, so they can inspire curious young minds and let them know that they can do a lot of things themselves. So it's really a path for kids to identify with people that look like them, and they can aspire to do the same thing.
Also, someone once said that you will be what you will see. And so one of our focuses within Meet the Scientists is actually to model and put before our youth actual live breathing examples of inventors, of innovators, of people who are actually doing this work. I don't have a precise number, but over the years we've brought lots of scientists, nanoscientists, nuclear physicists, mathematicians, medical doctors, various medical doctors. It's just been a phenomenal array of examples before our youth. And what's the beautiful part about it is that for the children, they get to ask us questions. They get to ask us questions. So what inspired you to become a computer scientist? And one of the things that I've always observed, it seems like a running theme, is that oftentimes it was our moms or our dads who was an inspiration to us to become what we became.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. So you're not only exposing our youth to great scientists, inventors, and astrophysicists, and all those other great things, but you are also allowing them to see possibility for themselves of what else they can do in life, and opening up their minds to a whole new realm of opportunities. Are there any young people who have come back to you and said, because of you, because of your program, or do you know of any young people that have been influenced so that they have turned their life into that kind of creation?
Yeah, I'll start off with that one, David. There are a few. We've had one young lady in particular who worked closely with us
Okay.
and Meet the Scientist, and I think now she's at University of Michigan studying medicine.
Dominic Witten.
Miss Dominique Whitten. There was actually a parent who would bring his children to Meet the Scientist, and on this one particular Saturday, we had two guests. It was a husband and wife team, both of which are PhDs. So the dad he's a nuclear physicist, and the mother is a mathematician. And as a result of that Meet the Scientist Saturday, the dad decided to enroll in college at Eastern Michigan University to study mathematics.
Awesome.
So we've had a number of those types of scenarios. An additional one that I will share. We had a medical doctor, Dr. Benjamin Osawa, who came out as a special guest. I know Dr. Osawa fairly well. He's my doctor.
Awesome.
Yes, he's a great doctor. And there were students who learned about Dr. Osawa's visit, who were pre-med students at Wayne State University. We also had some students from University of Michigan, and they came out just to hear Dr. Osawa's talk.
That's wonderful. So
Yes.
what is oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I like to mention that Dominic Witten went to Cass Tech, and she was an excellent science student. She did a project for Meet the Scientists, and her communication skills were so great. When Dr. Dillard stepped back, because he has a school in IT technology, he can speak more about that later. I didn't want to have the microphone in my hand, so I allowed her to. I opened up the program briefly, and I gave her the mic, and she would always do a presentation on the discipline of that modern trailblazer that was coming in, somebody that was doing something from the past, some courageous pioneer, and then she would go over that process, and then she would hand the mic to the modern-day trailblazer. She did an excellent job. I truly miss her, but she's went on to do some great things in STEM herself.
That's awesome. So STEM is very important. Tell us what one day at the Science Center looks like on a Saturday afternoon when you are with the youth. What does it entail?
So Now, we actually meet at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History.
Yes.
And so essentially, when we have special guests, we generally will set the stage by showcasing some trailblazer from the past,
Okay.
just so we can connect our history to our present and to the
Yes.
future. And then we will introduce a contemporary figure who's actually doing this type of work. And in many cases, we will have hands-on exhibits or hands-on activities. One particular Saturday that I recall where we actually had children making network connectors or cables called Ethernet cables, where they actually attached actual Ethernet connectors to cables. We've had mathematicians teach kids geometry,
Yes.
where they're making three-dimensional objects. I mean, it's just been a lot of different scenarios. And also, we had an instance where we had a biochemist show children how to extract DNA from strawberries.
Oh,
Yes, so
that's interesting.
very.
Never heard of that one.
Dr. Dillard, he came up with a great idea called Adopt a Saturday. Can he expound on that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yes.
So the basic notion, so one of the challenges that we've always encountered in the Meet the Scientist program is that of actually having sponsorship and funding. And so we sort of, kicked some ideas around, David and I and a few other colleagues at the museum. And so we came up with this notion of maybe expanding it out whereby different institutions of higher learning or even some commercial interests might be interested in adopting a Saturday whereby they will underwrite our efforts. One of the things that would be wonderful in Meet the Scientists is to have a bank of mobile computers, maybe have an enhanced wireless network, have state-of-the-art projection and sound capabilities where we can do some rather innovative things. There are some fantastic scientists around the country.
Yes.
I have a very good colleague, Dr. Latanya Sweeney. She was the chief technologist for the Federal Trade Commission, and now she teaches computer science at Harvard University. And just due to the busyness of her schedule, she was not able to readily come our way. But by having internet connectivity and conferencing,
Yes.
this is a way by which we could bring lots more guests into the museum.
I see we have a caller on the line, so if you will, we will take this caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Good afternoon.
Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How you guys doing? This is Ordinary Joe, and I consider myself to be a bit of a student of nature myself. And I think this is a really good program. Really good program. It should be replayed. But I wanted to know if you guys can discuss the string theory and how nanotech and nanochips really is governing the internet. But the string theory first. And would you say their names again?
Certainly. What was that first thing that you asked us to expound on?
String theory.
Steamberry.
A string theory.
Oh, okay. And the names that the gentlemen that we're speaking with today are Dr. Terrence Dillard to my far right and Mr. David Head of the David L. Head Foundation. Thank you, caller.
Okay. One more thing.
Yes.
I would like you guys to make the connection between Henrietta Lacks and her uterus and the stem cells they're using now today.
Thank you, sir. Henrietta Lacks.
Yep, and remember they took parts of her uterus and it's still alive today.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. We'll take your answers now to your
you
question.
answer that,
Thank
sir.
you.
That,
Oops. Go ahead.
So basically, string theory is a form of quantum physics that talks about how the universe operates. I couldn't really expound deeply on the topic, but nanoscience is a fascinating topic in and of itself. We actually have had nanoscientists at Meet the Scientists. So when we're talking about nanoscience, we're talking about technology that's at a microscopic level. Nanotechnology is being embedded not only in the clothes that we wear, but in some cases, nanoscience is being embedded in prescription drugs. It's being implemented in lots of different ways. With regards to Henrietta Lacks, that's a fascinating piece of history that would be beneficial for many of us to learn about. Henrietta Lacks was a woman who And I don't know the precise year that she ended up at Johns Hopkins University, but she was there for, I think she had uterus cancer, and when they removed her uterus, what they discovered was that her cells were regenerating.
Oh my.
And so they were able to take her cells without her knowledge and without her family's knowledge, and they were able to bring her cells to bear. So her cells are called HeLa cells. So people around the world, around the globe, are being cured of cancer as a result of the cells that came out of her body. And those cells haven't been, they haven't necessarily been replicated or reinvented. Her actual cells are replicating.
Oh my.
And now her cells have been shared with medical, situations around the globe. Her cells are all over the world.
That just shows you that God created bodies that can heal themselves, but we have to take care of them. We have to eat properly. We have to get the right amount of rest, and all that's a part of science. And I really understand the importance of what you gentlemen are doing. The history works in with the science and the technology, and you are giving our youth something that they will take for the rest of their lives and learn from. Can you tell us, is the nano, whatever it's called,
Nanotechnology.
technology, is that something that we should be concerned about?
Well, I don't know if it's something that we should be concerned about. I think it's important to understand how it works. For sure, it's a form of technology that's really pervading our world today.
Okay.
Technology is being shrunken down. If you think about some of the technologies that are very popular today, think about drones.
Yes.
Okay, so for the average person, when they think about a drone, they may think about a quadcopter that has 4 propellers on it. But now there are nanoscale drones that you can barely see.
Okay.
And these drones can do phenomenal things, good and bad.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And wonderful sometimes and wonderful not so wonderful.
Yeah.
Will you gentlemen please let our audience know what time of day you are at the, I said Science Center earlier, but the Charles Wright Museum. When you're there, when the program, is it from September to January? Is it all year long, nonstop?
Well, our program is every month. It's usually the last Saturday of the month from 2 to 4. It's on the lower level. It's right next to the Aspiring Minds exhibit. It's at the Orientation Theater.
Are there any costs involved for the youth, or do they just sign up, and how do they sign up?
There's no course. I encourage everyone to come out. We had nanoscientists. We had a young student from Ecotech speak about drones, 3D. There's always some exciting presenters. Recently, last month, we had a biomechanical engineer and a mechanical engineer, and they both made a beautiful presentation. We had at least 40 people, and they brought their kids down, and they had some interactive activities for the kids. It was awesome.
Wonderful.
We've also had a circumstance where we had a championship chess team that came and taught our audience, and they taught adults how to play chess.
Awesome. That would be me. I would need to learn. Mr. Head, you're also doing a lot within the city and in the realm of history. And I know this is one area, you're a history buff, so you're just going to constantly, I know whenever I reach out to you sometimes, you're going to the library to get some more history. Will you tell us some things about Detroit that you're doing in regards to history?
Yes. What is important is history. It's important to know where you came from, to really have appreciation to where you are, and have a better idea where you need to go in life. We all need to take on responsibility, and that's what I have done, taking on responsibility dealing with our history. Now, I have 2 books here. Recently, this book had just came out called The Dawn of Detroit by Professor Miles in Ann Arbor, University of Michigan, and it speaks of how slavery was practiced in the city of Detroit from its inception. Another book is on Negroes in Michigan history. This book was put together back in 1915, and it speaks about history going back, not moving forward. to emancipation. So this has a lot of history throughout the whole state of African American. Right here in the city and the state of Michigan, these are two treasured books. History is all around you, and I believe you must take on that responsibility and do some personal study, because a lot of times our children are not getting this history in their classroom.
Gentlemen, how can our audience get in touch with you? You've expressed shared a lot of information today, and I know that there may be questions later. Could you please tell us how we can contact you later about the Meet the Scientist program at Charles Wright Museum, or about the history of Detroit, or getting your books, Mr. Head or Dr. Dillard, even about taking some classes at the university level? Would you share how they can reach you, please?
Sure. So I can be reached if you just go to www.dcmeasures.com, and we have a contact page there where you can send me an email. Also, I will give out my telephone number, which is 248-219-8703. And, give me a call and let me know if you're interested in learning about technology. We can let you know if we have any courses happening in the area, and let you know about future events. And lastly, you can go to the Wright, THEWRIGHT.org. The Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History routinely advertises activities, including Meet the Scientist.
Wonderful. Now, is there a particular day that the youth can sign up, or are you open for youth to come in at any time of year? And what age? I don't know if we discussed the age range of the youth.
Well, there's no sign up required for Meet the Scientist. Okay. It's a community event, just like many events at the museum. It's really to reinforce community.
Yes.
And Meet the Scientist, if you think about it, sometimes they call it Science Saturday. So it's usually the last Saturday of each month, unless it's a Saturday that happens to have an extended, 5 weeks or what have you.
Yes.
But if you check the Charles H. Wright Museum's website, that will give you a forecast as to when Meet the Scientists will be meeting, and it's from 2 p.m. until 4 p.m., generally on the fourth Saturday of each month.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
There's a famous quote that Dr. Benjamin E. Mays once said. He said, "It must be borne in mind that the tragedy of life does not lie in not reaching your goals. The tragedy in life lies in not having goals to reach." And I think that's very fitting for what we've discussed here today. We're very blessed to have you, Dr. Dillard, Dr. Terrence Dillard, and Mr. David Head. I don't think we have time to take any more calls. It's time for us to wrap up now. We'd like to thank you for joining us today. You've been watching Exposé Under the Sun, brought to you by the Detroit Native Sun newspaper. I am your guest host, Patrice Lee. The Detroit Native Sun newspaper is now available in Kroger's. If you would like to be a guest on this show, or to advertise in the Detroit Native Sun newspaper, please call Valerie Lockhart at 313-457-5944. Again, we'd like to thank you, our special guests, Dr. Terrence Dillard and Mr. David Head, for joining us today. And we look forward to you joining us in the near future, next time on Exposé Under the Sun. Have a wonderful day.
I'm fabulous. Hi, Mommy. Hi, Daddy. I'm fabulous.
Young cat got back, did a little bit. Now we hardy, buffy, tough, do-rag and Tim's kinda hard to